Recently we saw the grand final in the women's AFL competition played in Adelaide, which was, again, described as a sellout and all the rest of it. We were told that 63,000 people attended this ground. People didn't pay for tickets, so attendance at the game was only an estimate. I googled it and found that the capacity of the ground was 53,000, not 63. And looking at what I saw of the game, spectators were hardly packed in like sardines, so I rather suspect that only half the capacity of the ground was reached. But of course that didn't stop all the associated guff that you get from the media, which enthusiastically gets behind the AFL for this competition. And I might say they could promote under 15 boys football with the same gusto they do this so-called women's AFL. And I'm sure they get quite a reasonable crowd for that as well, because the standard of the football would be as high, if not higher. And furthermore, people are not going to pay to see women in these games. It's never going to happen. And really the only avenue I would think for the AFL would be to have these women playing in bikinis. But then they would get a paying crowd. And on that subject, I really must digress by mentioning a recent event where leftist feminist women stripped down to nothing in pursuance of some political protest concerning Brexit in this case. And it's amazing how the feminists who will violently call out the objectification of the woman's body, who will then take part in some protest where they take it all off. I mean, the hypocrisy is absolutely stunning that they are using objectification of the woman's body in pursuance of their feminist leftist agenda. And of course, let's not forget the curious phenomenon of young women who become famous singers or actresses or whatever, who frequently, and especially in situations where they lose that first flush of fame and popularity, who inevitably turn to the objectification of their own bodies, who generally turn into some vampy sort of skimpily clad or worse, well, sex object. One thinks of Olivia Newton-John, who, with her career waning, turned into a seductress, sex kitten, maybe sex cat. Miley Cyrus, say no more. And even the young girl who performed the opening song at the Sydney Olympics, Nikki Webster, I think her name was, who, having lost that first glow of fame and public adulation, the last thing I saw of her, she was dressed up in leather with a whip or some other such thing. And this is just a really common theme with young women, and feeds into the biological fact that for the propagation of the species, women are sex objects. They tend to be the object of sexual activity rather than the kind of instigator or initiator of sexual activity. And males, to a much greater extent than women, are stimulated by the sight of and physical presence of women, and really not women to nearly the same extent. With these biological facts are completely ignored by feminism, of course, because it detracts from the power kick that drives their ideology, and exploiting the most primal human urges to run an intellectual argument. That's it for now.